Welcome to the CIBSE West Midlands Region CPD webinar on the Alexander Stadium redevelopment and M&E services. My name is Joss Brownlee and I'm the chair for the CIBSE West Midlands Region Committee, and it's great to have you with us today and thank you for joining us. Just a few housekeeping elements to start with, if I may. Please could you turn off your cameras and mics for the time being? We're not aware of any fire systems testing, so if you do hear an alarm or an announcement, please action it accordingly. This seminar is being recorded for visuals and audio and will be made available publicly shortly afterwards. Any CPD certificates will be sent via email afterwards. Please get in touch if you don't receive it automatically via email. Please use the chat function on Teams to ask any questions, and they'll be answered towards the end of the presentation, and we'll try to save some time towards the end of the event for open forum discussion. I'll hand you over to Stephen Keeley, Business Development Manager for King & Moffat, who will be presenting the first section of today's event.
Great, thanks very much, Joss. So thanks very much, Joss and CIBSE West Midlands for giving us the opportunity to present today. We're going to briefly, our agenda is we're going to introduce the team here in the office, a bit of company background about King & Moffat Building Services. Then we'll go into the project itself, Alexander Stadium redevelopment. We'll go on to some challenges and lessons learned that we came to through the building services, and then we'll get on to some questions and answers. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try and pick them up at the end. So as you can see, that's the redeveloped West stand at Alexander Stadium. So here from King & Moffat, there's Jonathan Pugh, our UK Managing Director, Dean Conliffe, our Mechanical Site Manager on the Alexander Stadium project, and Bill Allman, Electrical Project Manager. So if you have any questions for them and their particular experience on the project, feel free to drop those in. So a bit about King & Moffat. So King & Moffat Building Services, we're mechanical and electrical contractors with over 40 years experience in the industry. We are an Irish company originally, but we operate in the United Kingdom and mainland Europe, namely Germany and the Netherlands. We've 400 directly employed personnel and an annual turnover of £130 million. 80 million pounds of that is in the UK. So we have our own in-house design and BIM engineering teams and a dedicated okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to kickstart it. Yeah.
Sorry, a dedicated offsite prefabrication facility. So that's a big part of reducing our carbon footprint and our environmental sustainability plan. We're certified ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, Achilles Building Confidence Audited, Construction Goal Line members, various awards and different bits and pieces like that. Generally speaking, we've a very strong portfolio in industrial, food processing, life sciences, logistics, data center, and advanced manufacturing sectors. We offer a broad range of services, so electrical, mechanical, design, BIM, maintenance, as just mentioned, offsite, prefabrication, and controls and automation. In the UK, we have 3 offices, 2 in the Midlands, Birmingham and Wolverhampton, and then in Edinburgh. We've also offices, our headquarters in Carrick-on-Shannon in Ireland, and offices in Würzburg in Germany and Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So as you can see, we're a group of companies, local contracting companies in Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands and the UK, which delivered the Alexander Stadium project. As I mentioned, we're an international company. We're currently on site in the UK, Ireland, Germany and the Netherlands, and we have plans for future expansion in Sweden, Denmark and Belgium. So in terms of our growth over the past few years, we've grown quite strongly. That's mainly been driven by the UK, and we have plans to continue growing into the next 5-10 years. And in terms of our accreditations, we've all our accreditations and awards and certs and different pieces. This is a photo from during the recent athletics games in Birmingham, which you might have seen on the television or had the opportunity to attend. So the reason for the project was, if you can see, this was the Alexander Stadium pre-development on the right. It was a £72 million redevelopment into a high quality venue for sporting, leisure and culture events. The main reason behind the redevelopment was a major international athletics event which took place a few weeks ago. There's a new West Stand constructed and increased capacity around the stadium from 12,700 to 18,000. And the venue was developed into a World Athletics Class 1 facility, and as well as warm-up track, stadium lighting and associated infrastructure work. So I'll hand over to, and as you can see, that's the after, so that's post-development. So I'll hand over to Jonathan to discuss the project.
Okay, so just some of the stakeholders in the project. So the end user and the owner and the operator is Birmingham City Council. The main contractor on the project was McLaughlin Harvey, and the location of the site was in Perry Bar, Birmingham. It was a design and build project taken from a stage 4 design created by our consultants, and the final account was valued at £12 million. So we started on the project at just under £8 million. So there was quite a lot of changes throughout the process. So some of the things that we had going on during the tender stage, we had a very close relationship with our key partner, with McLaughlin Harvey from previous projects. We had local offices that were in Coleshill and Stoke. We've recently located our Stoke office to Wolverhampton, but we were in the vicinity of the Midlands. Obviously, the pre-construction, the planning, and the programs and the organograms were created at tender stage, and it was a very close bid all the way through, and there was a lot of information that was that we had to put a lot of effort into to be successful on the project. We did value engineering options at the tender stage, and then we sourced our supply chain, subcontractors, design partners, and delivery partners from local supply chains to support the social values action plan that was created with McLaughlin Harvey and Birmingham City. With things on the social values, obviously the local employment, so that was individuals as well as bringing on apprentices, trainees, and supporting the local community where we could, buying local and manufacturing local. So there was elements that we could manufacture. Our own prefabrication was done off-site, but it wasn't local. So we actually used prefabrication workshops local to the Midlands. We had a very ethical procurement process. And on the right, you can't see it, but that was our tracker that was created during the tender process, and we followed each element of it all the way through to the completion of the project. So it's very much we took the social values very seriously throughout it, and to support the Birmingham social values. Right, MEP scope. Not really going to sort of go through each element of the scope of supply. Very traditional, apart from the sports pitch and the training pitch lighting, which is something that we'd not really been involved with on any of the previous projects. So we called on specialists and specialist design. I'll go into that a little bit more because there is a legacy mode. We designed for an event, and we designed also for legacy. So the two overlaid, where we had to have particular designs for the world media, which was slightly different to the designs for the legacy of a traditional stadium and running track. So they brought their own challenges, which I'll explain a little bit later. Nothing really unusual on the mechanical and electrical services, apart from the fact that someone decided to build a curved building. So that added its challenges, because, as you know, pipe and containment and services aren't manufactured to be curved. So that did present a lot of coordination issues on the early days in the pre-construction, which again, there's a couple of slides on that you'll see the challenges that we were met with during the pre-construction and the design stages of the project. The project was, although it was a completion date for a single handover, we developed it in phases so that there was early access for the undertakings of other people coming on to use the facility for a shortened period more recently. So that's just a layout of the overall site. The programme, the planning approval was 30th of January 2020. The contract was awarded in July 2020, and we were engaged in the October 2020 with our pre-construction team. Our pre-construction team was site-based from the October, and with a very dynamic pre-construction activity based on the number of stakeholders, and even throughout the pre-construction there was a lot of enhancements and changes. Again, I'll explain that a little bit further on, in the slides. We actually started on site in March 2021. Now, it seems quite a lengthy lead-in, but what we were challenged with was we designed for our original project, which was a stand, and the stand was designed to the specifications and the requirements of a stand. The existing facilities were maintained by Birmingham City at the time, and then there was an overlay for a particular sporting event. What that overlay created was a stadium, and so they closed up the north and south elements of the facility, which are open under legacy and open within the original design. And by actually creating these temporary seating arrangements, it enclosed the whole facility. So at a point which was almost as we completed our design for the stands for our original contract, they classified it as a stadium, which did change the concept of the design. What that meant was life safety systems, public address systems, all had to be incorporated into one facility and managed from one facility. What that did to us on the design was quite considerable, really, because it meant that we now got to incorporate the east stand, which was an existing stand, and all of the equipment within that had to be upgraded to a stadium quality. So that was one of the challenges late on in our design. The practical completion was achieved in April 2022. There were test events run through May, and the athletics event overlay started in the May to the July, and then the event took place from the 27th of July to the 7th of August. Now, sorry about this. That's the one, sorry. A bit sensitive on the mouse, do apologise. So we had the design at Ariba stage 4, and it was given to us as a stage 4I, which was an unusual sort of situation to us because we were used to the BG6 and Ariba stages being sort of pretty generic, and so the design was given to us as an intent. We took on board the full design responsibility, and we brought Hawley to take on the design responsibility as a local MEP design consultant. We brought in local contractors for CDP Elements, which were the fire, the life safety, the security, the CCTV, the AC systems. These were all CDP elements of design. What we did find that during the pre-construction activities and during the design phases of the project, that under lessons learned, we had quite a lot of clashes at stage 5 because the tolerances that we brought through the models were sort of greater than we were going to build to. So when we took over the BIM model, we had quite a lot of clash management and clash detection going on, which we had to alter a lot of the routing of the services, and there was an exclusion zone put in on the original clauses in the contract. The exclusion zone, I understand, is perhaps slightly dated and maybe something that could be considered on projects going forwards, because that 150 mil ceiling exclusion zone was based on traditionally light fittings that were recessed into fittings, but with new technology, obviously, you've got LED fittings that actually sit within the constraints of the ceiling structure. So we did manage to, by sort of committee and by design development, we managed to reduce the ceiling exclusion zones. So it just gave us a little bit more play when we got services crossing over, and it was a tight service void. Stage 5 coordination raised some issues where we'd taken a design at stage 4, which had got allowances, sort of plus and minus allowances, and allowances made by one consultant. Then by actually taking on board another consultant who had also spare capacities, we felt that we'd exceeded some of the employer's requirements. So we did a lot of rationalisation and value engineering to make the services so that we still maintain capacities, but if you add the capacities from the original tender all the way through to the final design, we found that the capacities were far in excess of what the employer's requirements had allowed, and also it just meant that our services installation, we had a lot more clashes because we got bigger containment services, bigger ductwork, and we rationalised it to make it work. Earthing. One thing that I've learned about Birmingham is that before we start another project of this nature, that we'll get a geological survey carried out, because we did a sinkhole of some 80 metres to get down to the earth requirements to get down to 5 ohms, and so something that we've learned from the local sort of Birmingham areas is that that maybe, you know, an earth mat or some other type of design might have saved us quite a lot of pain through that process. The data network distribution, it was a lot of the data network that was given in the tender documents meant that we were exceeding the 90-metre design requirements for the cabling installation, and again we had to then find additional rooms, additional servers and additional data cabinets were put into the projects, which there wasn't a lot of capacity or spare room, spare space in the building itself. Every space was used, so that's something else that we learned through the process. And the design capacities, the tolerances on tolerance I mentioned earlier, it just led to quite a lot of coordination problems. One of the things that we learned during the design development was when we brought the CDP elements in, we found that we'd underestimated the capacities for things like the refrigeration pipework. Particularly, we'd modelled the services up until we were almost due on site, and then we appointed our subcontractors to install the AC systems, and we found that the containment services that were incorporated by the tender at the tender stage, and also by our own coordination and design, they were undersized to the point of we had 150 mil containment for the refrigeration pipework, and we installed 600 mil. What that meant to us coordination wise was that after we'd designed, done the model, got it approved, done the builder's work and issued the builder's work, which was in the March when we first started, we then had to go back and we had to redress it all. We had to resubmit builder's work. It was an arduous situation, and to be honest, it was challenging for us. It was challenging for our builder. It put a lot of tension on our relationship at the time, because the walls were being constructed with the builder's work holes in them, and then we were going back constantly and changing it. So it was something that we've learned going forwards, is that whilst when we do the design deliverables, the first thing that the builder's asking for is builder's work around the building services. And whilst you can give them some indication, it's very difficult to actually to nail it if you haven't got the CDP elements of the design incorporated into the design early enough. So that was again a lesson learned during our design development. The project as it developed. Just a slide there showing it, and what you can see there is you can see the I don't know if you can see the mouse, but you've got the west stand, which was a new construction, fully new construction. You've got the east stand, which was an existing building, which was probably about between 11 and 15 years old when we started our projects. And then you've got the you've got the north, which is to the left of the building, and you've got the south. Now you can see on the overlay what they're starting to do is incorporate the seating for a temporary sporting event, and the same was done on the south elevation. You can just see the crane there that's erecting it, and what that meant, that was where it brought it into becoming a stadium. And so it was fully enclosed for the games event. To the just to the bottom, you've got a track which is a high performance centre, and that's an indoor 100-metre track. And then you've got this gym area, which is the in the short arts and GMAC. Yeah, the GMAC, which is where they did sort of martial arts and training, and also there's some high performance training facilities within that building. Now those two and the East Stand were existing buildings. When it became a stadium, then the performance of the stadium was changed, the requirements for that, and those requirements also spilled out into the training facilities for it. The track you see on the left hand side, that's a training track, and that was also created for the event, and is a legacy. The next one, these are just that's the West Stand, and that was the new build stand. I think it's about 5,000 capacity. Yeah, 5,000 capacity. So substantial concrete construction. There is internally, you've got spaces for media. There's the glass boxes that you can see there, which were created for letting as boxes. The East Stand. So the East Stand, as I say, we did some refurbishment on the health and safety, the fire alarm systems, and the other services in the East Stand, and then it was brought up to the quality of it was increased. There was concessions incorporated into it for the event, which become legacy, and you can just see the columns sort of. Which have been erected for the event. These are just a couple of slides really of the areas. So you've got that area there is just a public space where that's just an open public space. On the right hand side, that's a gym. It was built as a gym, a gymnasium for gym equipment and for training. And it's after the games, it will become a fully functional gym. Reception areas. So a number of different facilities. You've got the reception. You've got changing villages, changing areas. The kitchen, which is below, was a late instruction, and the kitchen was in an area which was glazed on the outside, and something that we've learned is that there's a lot of heat gain, and whilst the kitchen staff we catered for the temperatures for the kitchen staff, the heat gain was on the pass where there was a lot of there was people servers coming in and out, and it was quite considerable. So when it's been functioning, we've been putting temporary cooling into the space, and that's something as part of the legacy that we're going to enhance with some cooling into the space. It was originally designed as a library, so it was adapting an area that wasn't originally destined to be a cooking facility. The breakout spaces, so these are the corporate spaces, so big open plan corporates, and that can be split into and segregated into separate areas for individuals, and then there's individual boxes also. That space is also going to house a bar and other facilities as part of the legacy project, and part of the ongoing facilities use for future events. Just a couple of shots of the corridors. You'll see in a minute when I show you a couple of the BIM models how tight these corridors were. Oops, sorry. How quite close the services were within the corridor, and also the linear light fittings that you see there. They were actually bigger than the ceiling space in a lot of applications. So there was a redesigned ceiling that had to be. Oh, crikey! Sorry, the mouse has got a mind of its own. In the toilet areas, because it was a public toilet, you can see the lowered sink, the lowered basin. That was again a later change. It wasn't in the original tender design, so something again, another lesson learned when we're working on a public facilities to make sure that we cater for not just ambulance access, but also for the juniors as well as the adults. On the left, you'll see that there was this is a shot showing the erection of some of the lighting on the externals. Now, the flood lighting was designed for 8K camera presentation for the event, for the recent events. The planning permission was for a 35-metre column, and these are 65-metre columns. And so there was temporary planning allowed for the columns, and they've got to be decommissioned and brought down to 35 metres as post games. Now, it sounds fairly simple, but when you've got different stakeholders with different interests in not just the cost, but the application of them, then it made it quite a difficult process. We also had a few issues with deliveries, and I'll come on to that in a minute as to why the deliveries were impeded. And then on the right hand side, you'll see some of the boxes and the seating around the west stand. There we go. Plant areas, plant rooms, good space, well designed, well developed, and easy to maintain. And then there's a bit of spare capacity for incorporating some of the fallow spaces, and so it was well thought through from tender and through the process and through the design and the installation. We've maintained the facility since completing in April, and we continue to maintain it until November. And I'll explain something behind that in a minute, which again is something that we've learned through the process. Switch rooms, switch gear, obviously nothing new to anyone on this call, but just represents the installation as we had it. These are some of the bin models and some of the coordination problems that you can see that we had. So you can see there on the left hand one how tight the structure was to the services. Sorry. That's the one. And on the right hand side, you see the challenges and the problems that we had with the structure on a curving structure with straight containment, straight pipework, and straight steelwork. I must add. So it just presented an awful lot of challenges. Now, on the electrical side, we had a 4,000 amp cast resin busbar, and so you can imagine just going around some of those bends and to have it prefabricated and manufactured was a challenge in itself. That led to a program challenge because it was the higher services, meant that we couldn't put some of the lower containment in until we'd actually got that delivered, which was on a long lead. So again, it's something that perhaps with a little bit more foresight it could have been done earlier in the project, but then again, you don't know the size of the containment, the size of the bus bar and the supplies until you've done the rest of the design. So, so something to bear in mind, program design deliverable wise. Again, some more examples of taking square and straight ductwork round a curve, and the problems that came. Some of that is actually coordinated to miss walls, sort of low-level walls and segregated rooms, building square rooms around curved installations. On the maintenance, we took over the maintenance from the April date, and we maintained it for 9 months. Now, the maintenance was a hybrid solution, and that was because the facility, when we took it over, had still got an ongoing maintenance process, and it had a period to run. So that maintenance contract was frozen. We created a hybrid solution for the existing facilities and for the new facilities. New facilities were obviously more straightforward because we could pick up something that we actually knew, and we knew the suppliers, we knew the quality of what was installed, how it was installed, and we were looking after then other facilities that we'd adopted. And so we got a variety of challenges on the maintenance, because there was still a legacy incumbent maintenance contracts that we didn't want to nullify the warranties on. Our 9-month maintenance contract, because it was specified as SFG 20, is designed around 12 months contracts and 12 months maintenance. When you're given a 9-month contract to maintain a facility, it's difficult then to maintain that facility. Do you do 12 months maintenance within 9 months, or do you just forget the last 3 months? So that was a challenge in itself. There was also with the stakeholders and the amount of duty holders and stakeholders, not everyone was paying for every element of it. So again, that presented its own problem, and it's something just to think about if there's if we come across anything of this nature again, really. And then we carried out 18-hour maintenance cover throughout the period of the recent games, and that was for the 7-day period, so overall 11 days with double shift and double shift maintenance. The actual the operation during the recent event, we found that anything that we found that was a problem was generally operator errors, as opposed to the plant, because the plant was maintained fully. There was daily checks. There was regular pre-event checks that were carried out, and so that sort of led to very little in the way of the equipment failures. As I say, it was mainly operator errors that we found throughout the period. Challenges and lessons learned. The programme was a challenge in itself. There was a very definitive deadline, obviously with an event coming up, and that event is sort of pre-planned for a number of years, months. So a very definitive deadline that you couldn't miss. We felt that perhaps the design and the pre-construction lead-in time we felt comfortable at the start of the project. As we got to the stages of installation, we felt that it was probably with foresight, it would have been better placed earlier, and maybe even when the original contract was placed with the main contractor, at that point we would have probably done a lot better by putting someone on site and actually developing it from day one. The amount of stakeholders, we had challenges with the council were obviously the biggest stakeholder because it's their facility. There was an overlay team and an overlay committee who had a slightly different agenda, different requirements, and there was a lot of temporary facilities that were incorporated into the facility later on, and those then presented issues with coordination, services, installations, just plug in really, and making sure that the stakeholders of each element had exactly the facility they expected, albeit some of it was temporary. We then tried to rationalise it to make sure that anything that was going in temporary was a facility that maybe could have been used in the legacy mode of the project. And there was a lot of bureaucracy about getting sign-off, who pays for what, and who's responsible for elements of it. Supply chain delivery times. The columns, the floodlighting was on a long lead, and because of the design of it and because of the actual structure around the floodlighting, because it was a 65-metre tower for the event, and a 35-metre tower for the legacy, it was not just who was responsible to design it, but there was an infrastructure. So just things like the civils and the groundworks, if you put in something that's 65 metres high up, it's obviously got a different civils requirement for something that's 35 metres. And that had a massive impact on the programme, because who pays for the additional element, and it's an element that's got to be there permanently. So that's actually created quite considerable design development periods for something that was on a long lead, and then because of some of the delivery times, the actual rest of the programme was at large. We had to pay for substantial track protection because some of the equipment wasn't delivered, couldn't be delivered until it was fully designed, and the programme didn't accommodate fully what the impact was. The design changes that we had through the process, there are some incumbent, some elements of the building that are sublet, and we had additional kitchens brought into the project after we'd completed our design and the modelling, and then we had to increase the capacities on the ductwork and on quite a fair few of the services to incorporate 2 kitchens, and these are industrial kitchens, and then we had to find routes for fire-rated ductwork through a facility and through a service that had already been coordinated. So it just gave us a lot of challenges at the time. Scope gaps. There was the scope gaps were created by the amount of stakeholders and bringing into sort of control elements of the design that maybe weren't considered for fallow spaces and for the use of fallow spaces. So it was enhancement as much as it was scope gaps. The impact of COVID-19. We started in the March on site in the March 2020, which was perhaps at the time of the COVID. The floodlighting where it was specialist was literally on a slow boat from China and delivered to the site 9 months late. And that was all due to the impact of COVID. What that did mean was that we were operating and we were installing it out of season. You'd want to install anything that's a towering 65 metres high with 100-metre cranes. You'd want to be doing that through the some of the months. We were actually doing it through the winter months. And that presented its own challenges, both from an installation sort of period and also from logistically. It was having an impact on handing over areas for other people to overlay. And the commissioning, we were commissioning for a legacy facility, and then commissioning again for an event facility, and that again presented its own challenges because we were doing things twice, and again it's something, a lessons learned for us when we enter into a similar type of projects. And really that's hopefully that's given you some representation of the challenges that we had on a project which was unusual to us. It was obviously in the local community, and I think we enjoyed the project. We felt that we learned an awful lot through it. Obviously this is just a snapshot of the whole process, and if anyone's got any questions, if they want to raise them, or if you want to sort of send them through the portal, and we can answer them at leisure. But
yeah, so I think that there could be questions in the chat, and if there are, we'll answer them, or if you want to ask any more, we can answer them. So comment from Andrew Seal: DX pipe runs and power runs for condensers are often overlooked in coordination, yet DX cooling in AHUs is definitely gaining in popularity. Kitchen dishwasher air change rates are considerable more. So yeah, it's more just a comment. So question: did the duct direction changes caused by the curve create noise issues, or was noise criteria quite relaxed as it's a stadium?
No, it did create noise issues. Obviously, the duct sizes had to be altered to compensate for it. There was a lot of wind turbulence around some of the corridors, and we did had to redesign it. Fortunately, there was capacity, and there was the area and space available, but as you saw from the BIM model, that space got congested fairly quickly to the point where we really couldn't do a lot more at the time. So
a question from Neville Radford. Fantastic insight to the project, and thank you to all groups for selecting RIM boilers. Would it be possible to showcase this project with King & Moffat in a backseat case study? That's probably a question for afterwards.
Yeah. I don't see any reason why we couldn't. Yeah.
What BMS is fitted for the HVAC?
It was who was the installer that we had?
Robel.
Yeah, Robel, and the software.
Wasn't Trent, was it? What was the other one?
No.
Can't remember now off the top of my head what it was.
Okay. We didn't use the Siemens.
No.
No. They had just on that one. The existing facilities had Siemens BMS, and we incorporate. I think we might have put the Trend system in, and the two when they merged them as an overall facility. So they were actually independently managed, but then when they merged them as an overall facility, we enhanced the East Stadium BMS, but there is a legacy project now to incorporate the two, so there's more functionality. At the moment, all we've got talking between the two buildings is high level alarms, and so if there's something raised in the east stand, you have to go and you have to visually inspect it, which isn't a bad thing when it comes down to maintenance, but no, there is a future enhancement of the system to bring it all into the same BMS.
Question from Rafe Amuda: have you considered the use of renewable energy on the project?
There is a consideration for it. At the time of the initial project, I think it was more a case of functionality. I mean, the only thing that we have got a harvesting system which is installed, and that harvesting system obviously caters for the sprinklers, for looking after for the grazing, and also it goes through through what?
The flushes all the toilets.
Yeah, and it's used for the toilets and for the jumps as well, for the tracks, for the water jumps.
I'm not sure if Alan's question got cut off there.
Hi.
But
I was just saying hi.
Justin Milcreast, interesting presentation. Thank you. If you could go back, would you do it all again? Maybe that's a question for the site manager, the project manager.
I would, yeah, I do.
I would,
yeah. And yeah, especially with.
I think with the lesson learned, it's like any project. It's a shame that when it comes to an end, that you don't go on to another one and use those lessons learned. And if you could, you would do it again. Absolutely. You know, we've been through projects that have been difficult. I'm sure that everyone on this call's been through a project where they've thought never again. But then once you're over it, it's just a shame that you can't actually use that learning to do a similar project. Yeah, we would probably do another one, Justin. Yeah.
Did you have anything more on that, lads? Just
yeah, no, just definitely it was a good experience, all the good and the bad. You know, it made it what it was in the end, and it was a good project to be involved in.
It's all a learning curve, isn't it? It's all a learning curve.
They'd probably ask for more money if they did it again.
That's true.
Quickly, Kyle, a question from Kyle Wheeler. Due to the variability in occupants and users, did sizing the DHW generation for showers and kitchen cause any issues?
No, because it was to cater for. It was designed to cater for the legacy facilities. Due to the games event, there was a lot of temporary facilities and concessions that were temporary and just bolted on. So the actual the facilities built into the stands are there to cater for the overall capacity of the legacy projects.
It's a comment from Alan Carroll of McLaughlin.
Hi, Alan. Yeah.
The project was extremely challenging with many layers of governance and changes being instructed late. King and Moffat coped admirably with all the challenges put in front of them and delivered a first-class project. And I suppose it's important to say how good a client McLaughlin and Harvey are throughout. We've worked with them on a number of projects, and they're just top-class client.
I think everyone that worked on the project had the same ambition, was to deliver something that was nationally representing the UK, and something that was representing not just the Midlands but everyone that was involved in it. And I think the teams, we worked well in full collaboration with our client McLaughlin Harvey, with Birmingham City Council, and with the overlay, and Mace shouldn't be underestimated as the overall project managers. Absolutely top job. So I think we can all, everyone can be proud of what they did and what we established throughout the project.
Justin Mildcrease, thanks for your answer to my earlier question. I understand fully, most honest and therefore informative presentation, which is much appreciated. Hopefully not too honest. Seeing the word honest there. Martin Cullis, very interesting. Will there be a link to this recording and are the slides? I think that there will be a recording, Martin, and we can share the slides with CIBSE, and I'm sure they can share them out. We're happy to share them. Paul saying a challenging but interesting project delivered for a world-class event. So if there's any other questions, we'd be happy to take them now, or we can finish up at 4 o'clock. Let everyone get away.
I think we timed it perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay, as we do all our projects. Okay.
Right. Well, thank you very much for that, Stephen and Jonathan. Very useful, very insightful, and inspirational elements there, especially with the dual purpose with the games and the legacy elements. So I'd like to thank you all very much for your part in the delivery of the presentation today, and I thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event. Thank you all very much.